these elite runners before they take off, and the rest of the masses are taking off their clothes, getting ready to start the 29th running of the LaSalle Bank Chicago Marathon. And they're off.
And the 29th running of the LaSalle Bank Chicago Marathon is underway.
The elite women were on the right side of the screen and the elite men on the left. And Tony, one of the most amazing things that I saw with those elite men is very few of them have any concessions for cold. They're wearing shorts, singlets, and the Kenyans aren't even wearing gloves.
I'll tell you, in 2002, it was 32 degrees at the start, and it was much colder. In 1999, Canucci set a world record, and it was every bit as cold as it is today. The big question isn't the cold, it's the direction and severity of the wind. And it could be pushing them for parts of this course, but in the last 3 miles, it'll definitely be in their face. We'll see. We got 4 pace setters leading the charge in the men's race. No pacers for the women, but the men have 4 pacers who are going out at a 63-minute, 10-second first half pace. That is 4 minutes and 50 seconds per mile. You take that through the entire distance, and it's 2:06 marathon pace. We'll see if the elite athletes follow that pace or not. We'll find out very quickly.
You mentioned back in 99 in Canucci, it was, I think, about 32 or 34 degrees at race start. It is considerably warmer today by those standards, but again, as you mentioned, the wind will be a huge factor in this race.
It's a northwest wind. We can look out at the balloons, which are right over the lake, and it's definitely pushing more west almost than north. And from that standpoint, it's a north-south course. It could be hitting them, from a 7.5 miles all the way to 23 miles for the most part, sort of at their right shoulder and at their back. But there's other parts when you're going out the west loop when you're going directly into the wind. So already, look at our 4 pace setters. See what's happening already? Our 4 pace setters are all by themselves. The other guys have decided, I'm not sure I want to go out at that particular pace. But that's fine. The pace setters are paid to run a specific pace. If the elites want to go with them, that's fine. If they don't, that's their choice.
And as for the women, Constantina Temescu-Dita has said she is in the shape of her life, and she wants to break that mystical, magical, stratospheric 2-hour, 20-minute barrier. She said she's ready. She said it publicly. That means she has to run every mile at 5 minutes, 20 seconds or less.
As we look at the masses taking off their clothes, trying to inch towards that start line, let's take a look at the course. It is very similar to last year's course with a few minor changes as we look at the rabbits now take forward. And again, starting down here in Grant Park, you'll notice some red little inflections on this map, and those will indicate some of the minor changes in this course as it goes around the West Loop. And then back around UIC, it starts heading through Pilsen and South. There is one of those red turn changes again in the South Loop around 35th, and then back down to the finish line. Again, Executive Race Director Kerry Pinkowski looking to make this the fastest course in the world, not in the United States, but in the world.
Well, right now, Berlin, which was run 1 month ago, another one of the World Marathon Majors, which we'll talk about more later in the program, but Berlin, Rotterdam, and London are the other 3 world record-type courses in the world, and there's a lot of bragging rights between those executive race directors of who's got the fastest course. Right now, Berlin's got a 2:05.56 run by Haile Gabriel Selassie 1 month ago. That's the mark we're looking first to beat. It's just the fastest in the world for this calendar year.
But they also set, of course, the world record there at 2:04, which is just so astonishing how anybody could ever run that fast. But the other 2 parts of the marathon majors are the New York City Marathon, the Boston Marathon, not known for being particularly fast courses, but they have huge other things to offer. And runners, all us competitive runners, know when you mention a course and you mention a temperature, you know what it means. Right. You do the mental translation in terms of time. So if somebody were to run a 2:05 at Boston, for instance, for heaven's sakes, you would know that was just off the charts.
Well, Mark, just to give you a good idea, the Boston course record, which Robert Chariot set this spring, was 2:07.14. I'm not sure that fits into the top 10 times ever run in Chicago.
Right.
But that's Boston. Boston's got is a hilly course. And since they've run it 110 years, you run the fastest time in 110 years, that's pretty darn good.
Back towards the start line now, you can see the masses, 40,000 of them, inching forward. Again, this race started several minutes ago, 4 minutes and almost 30 seconds ago, and yet these people in the back have not moved an inch.
It'll take a half an hour at least to clear that starting line. At least a half an hour, which means our leaders will be past the 10-kilometer mark.
Yeah. That's amazing. But, you know, in case people watching don't understand this, these runners are not panicked like they used to be in the old days because they're wearing this champion chip on their shoe.
Right.
And this chip is a little transponder that goes across the mat that registers your time actually when you start. So even if you start a half an hour behind the leaders, you don't start until you cross the start line. And then you're picked up throughout the course with your different split times.
Yes, at every 5K there is a mat, and they will get a split time every 5 kilometers. And again, when they cross the finish line, that will go ahead and register their official finish time. As we see the men's rabbits out front, the pace setters. Today, the first mile split at 4:52, Tony. The event record, obviously, at 5 minutes.
Well, that's because Cleed went out slow in that 1999 race. The average for the course record is 4:46 high. That's the average is like 4:46 per mile. But that on the left, that Sammy Kipken, the world record over at 5K on the roads. Richard Kipling got the other guy, number 41, who was only going through the half point at 63:10. There's two other guys who will go farther, who are lagging behind as the backup pacers.
All right, Tony, I think we're having a little technical problem with your mic right now as we look at these leaders. Again, just their first split at about 5:40 through the first mile. So the pace setters are doing what they're supposed to do. Let's check in now with Rob Johnson. Rob?
Yeah, Mark, this is great. Down at the start line here, all the folks coming through, they're hooting and hollering. I think many of them are excited. I think the other ones are just trying to convince themselves that they're warm. We got Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen playing down here, getting everybody motivated, and people are shedding their clothing, much like people would say at a Bruce Springsteen concert. So everybody having a terrific time down here. I'm sure a little bit later when those bodies warm up a little bit and the reality sets in, their enthusiasm will wane a little bit. But everybody very excited here, and smiles on faces. And for many who are running for the first time, what an amazing physical accomplishment it is. So we're just down here soaking it all in right now. We're going to be here and there and everywhere all morning long, and we'll be back to you in a couple of minutes, Mark.
All right, Rob, thank you very, very much. Of course, we're going to step aside for just a moment, take a little time out, but we'll continue our coverage of the 29th running of the LaSalle Bank Chicago Marathon right after this. 1,000 runners to clear the start line as we move back now to the elite men.
It looked like an army has decamped from that area.
Only 25 minutes. Only 25 minutes to clear the entire starting line. I mean, Mike Nishi is the general manager of the LaSalle Bank Chicago Marathon. Kerry Pinkowski, of course, the executive race director, but Mike is a lot of behind the scenes, all the nuts and bolts and getting this thing done. These are 4-star generals getting unbelievable logistics taken care of.
The background will be familiar to Chicagoans. Lincoln Park, again, the trees starting to turn, providing a beautiful backdrop to this race as we see the men motor through Lincoln Park, again, at a very, very good pace, a pace that the pace setters were asked to run, is being run. And again, just if you're joining us, Konstantina Temescu-Dita, who has won this race, finished second to Dina Castor a year ago, has gone out in a blazing pace with about 7 or 8 men. And we'll see how she does and whether or not she can keep up that pace.
Behind, and he's probably running the smartest race of anyone because he's letting everyone do the work for him.
All right, Todd, we'll get back to you in just a moment. Right now, let's check in with Rob Johnson. Rob?
All right, Mark, we're here at the start line for one last bit of
M3 as we look at the course now from our satellite to mile 10, Old Town, Sedgwick, and North. That's where the runners are approaching, at least the elite men, and that's where Todd Williams is standing by. Todd?
This is a great point of view right here. We have number 12, Abdi Rahman, who's running a very intelligent race right now. He's tucked in behind from mile 1 to mile 11. They went through mile 10 in 48:12, so they're still on sub-206 pace. As you can see, all the major players are in here, and what that tells me, the bigger the group, the faster the time, because these guys can work off each other. And I will say, at this type of tempo, you're going to see this thing start to break up here pretty soon, especially heading into halfway and after.
All right, Todd, thank you. We'll continue to check with you throughout the day as this pack of men continues to run very comfortably on what is it, about a 2:06 or just under 2:06 marathon time. Anything that jumps out at you, Tony, as you look at these men?
Those 13 men in the pack along with our 4 rabbits. And no, they've all been configured pretty much this way right from the beginning. The only guy, well, a couple of guys haven't shed their shirts in the red. That's Ben Mayo, second place in all these races. And most of the guys have kind of, they've stripped down and ready. Daniel Jenga in the light blue shorts there. Jimmy Muindi in the hat right next to him. So all the players right there.
Tony and Catherine, I'd be interested. There are a lot of international runners. When you come around a corner and you come through a neighborhood and the applause erupts, can you gain any energy from that?
Well, you almost have to catch yourself from getting too much energy.
That's
You
right.
got to hold yourself back. When you go through these pockets of big numbers of people, you want to look good, so you open your stride up, and we take a look at our splits now. That's the big 103.11, right where they wanted to be. So they're right on event record pace, sub 206, and not off the world record pace by that much at all. And all the heavy hitters are still right in there. The pace is still strong. The pack is still deep. And, boy, I'm telling you, so we thought it'd be a tough day weather-wise. So far, perfect day weather-wise.
The second race.
Let's take a look. This is a slow motion of her running style. And again, it seems powerful, but it also seems pretty inefficient. Give me a sense of what you're seeing here.
Well, it looks to me that she's overstriding and that she's really pumping those arms very hard. And if we had a comparative of her running last year in a tape, it's a completely different looking person. And I suspect that with the shorter distance races, she's been actually doing some weight work and some bounding drills because she's trying to get her speed back.
Well, just look at her left hand is clenched, her right hand is unclenched.
Yeah. But the other thing that is misleading is she looks like a very, very tough athlete here. If she was standing beside you, she's barely 5'2", and I don't think weighs 100 pounds, and she's a very delicate creature. But boy, when she's in flight, she looks powerful.
But Mark, it's the same thing with golf. You got guys who've got homemade swings, and yet they get the job done, and it's a repetitive swing.
Right.
This is a stride which has taken her to the top of distance running in the world. So we can talk about inefficiency all we want. The bottom line is, when she gets to the line, she's won and been second twice.
Jim,
Todd, the last 3 miles have been the ones most severely into the wind because they're going out the west loop and back, and that's exactly the same time, 13 to 16, where the wind is directly in their face.
Tony, tell us which one is Abdi, because I think the audience would love to know which one is the American.
Yeah, where's Abdi Abdurrahman right now, and what colors is he wearing?
Abdi is in red, white, blue. He's got the USA across his chest, and he's right in the middle. I mean, he's running right next to Robert Chariot. He's right next to Ben Mayo. He's tucking in behind. He's running with the best guys in the world. This could be a huge breakthrough race for Abdi.
Wearing a hat, wearing gloves as well, with the white top.
Right. And what a great story he is. I mean, it came from Somalia originally. He's an American citizen. He trains with Dina Castor and Meb Keflezgiad and Mammoth Lakes. A great, great story to see an American in the lead.
Catherine.
Yeah.
We've got a quick little side note right there. If you saw
now to run a 2:18 marathon.
But look at her arm. Her arm extension's the same as it was. Her leg extension's the same as it was. So you look for corruptions in form, and her form, even though it's animated, isn't any really different than it was at mile 2, 3, and 4.
somebody who's going to have a much better idea about how Constantina is doing is Julie Henner. Julie, what can you tell us?
Well, what I can tell you is mile 18 and mile 19 were both 5:30, but what's been a big indication to me is that since mile 18, many of the men have begun to pass Constantina, and her reaction has been almost like she doesn't even see them. She doesn't try to go with them. She doesn't try to, tuck in and have them block the wind. Just no response at all. So I think she's in heavy concentration mode and really just, trying to keep herself together. She does still look quite efficient, but every once in a while you do see the grimace on her face. She's shaking out her arms right now. So I think the early torrid pace is starting to set in just a little bit here.
All right, marathoner was talking about how marathoning and distance running has taken a while to kind of root itself here in America, unlike Kenya and some of these other countries in the African nations, and that some of these runners now are starting to get to the point where it's important, and we're starting to see people like Abdurrahman, Brian Sell start to come to the forefront a little bit and compete in marathons.
Sell, by the way, is about 1 minute and 40 seconds behind these guys, so he's running a great pace. 2:09 by himself is now. Todd, there goes Chariot, a little bit of a surge.
Exactly, right when we were talking about everybody who's going to win out of this race, Robert Chariot took a peek around his shoulder and accelerated it. And this, from a veteran like Robert, this could be the move. If these guys don't cover, this could be the one that takes him to the finish line. He keeps peeking over, and he looks comfortable running probably 4:45 tempo right now.
Yeah, but look who's, it looks Jenga, he's got the answer. Looks like Mwindi is making his way back. This wasn't an all-out surge. Talk about in the sense that people make tests.
Exactly, and I think that's what Robert may have done right there, just to see who's going to go with me. And Jenga is going to fight because he doesn't want to be second or third again. I think the surprise out of these four is Jimmy Mwindi. I mean, he's a veteran, but he's hanging in there tough right now. And Abdi, this is Abdi's chance. He's got to make sure he covers this break because these guys are the real deal at this point.
Well, one of the things that Robert Chariot, who just took a lead and did that surge, told me was that he was a little worried about the wind because of his size. He was worried that the guys would use that to their advantage and keep in behind him. So he's doing a lot of work for them also when he does this. So
but all four of those guys are all long, thin guys. None of the short, strong Kenyan runners are here. They're all long string beans.
Yeah, exactly. And at this point, it's really no one's worried about breaking the wind. They're worried about making a strategic move to try to win this thing. Abdi, in my mind, has the most speed just because he's coming off a PR in Hingalo in June running 27:22 for 10K. But if maybe Robert's thinking about that and trying to get this thing finished before we get to that last couple miles.
All right, Todd, keep an eye on them. We'll be back to you in just a moment. Let's go back and check with the lead women. And, of course, that would be Konstantina Temescu-Dita.
Off this pace, but still running a phenomenal time. And the two guys we anticipated and one guy we didn't, Jimmy Mwindi, are running very smoothly and very controlled. Robert Chariot has surged once, and so has Daniel Jenga, but Jimmy Mwindi's just been in front. And I can't pick a champion right now, as now Mwindi goes back into the lead.
Well, let me tell you a little bit of a story about the guy who's in third in the Aqua, and that is Daniel Agenda from Kenya, obviously, but he lives most of the time in Japan. He's been there since he's been a teenager. He trains with a very, very tough Japanese system. Number 2, Daniel Agenda. Looking behind. That's not actually a good sign. But he's finished second and third here. And in the press conference, he was very impressive because he was speaking English, Swahili, and Japanese. He said, "Mr. Carey," to the race director, "I have to win here today." And Tony and I said, if you're going to win, Daniel, you got to break away before the last mile of the race.
But that's because you can see he's got Kenyan talent with Japanese discipline, but both those systems do not put a focus on sprinting speed at the end, so he can't wait for the kick. He's got to make a move before the end, because last year he wanted to make a move going over the bridge over Roosevelt, over the little bridge, but Felix Lima went 200 meters before they got to the bridge, and he didn't have the ability to shift his gears, downshift, and get into that higher gear. And he can't wait for these guys to make those moves. He got to start driving now.
I think you're right, Mark. I mean, Daniel Jenga's doing a great job of tucking in behind. Robert Chariot, again, hasn't touched it. The last 3 or 4 miles, nobody's really made any type of acceleration. I mean, you're talking about 450 to 455. These guys in their head right now are just planning, when am I going to make my move? The grimace, I think, is just because when you run this fast for so long, you're going to have a little pain, but it comes down to the training. At this point in races, you just have, all these guys are thinking, look, I put in 130, 140. Some of these guys run 180 miles per week in preparation for this, so it comes down to guts, and it comes down to being smart and when you're going to make your move, and that's what they're going over in their head right now.
Todd, it's a real subtle sport, as you well know, so you're looking for small things. Who seems to be most contained? I think Chariot.
Chariot looks fantastic. I mean, he's looking around. He's making, he's looking. Is this guy looking tight? I think he's doing that because when he does see any type of, if he looks over and sees Jinga Grimison, if he looks over and sees Jimmy Grimison, maybe this is my time to go and I'm just going to put this thing away right now. But he looks the best out of the 3.
He's thrown up in the past. Maybe he should have thrown up on one of them.
And again, you can see Chariot looking back, trying to surge, and Jenga here is right there. He's not going to let Chariot get out of his sights.
He didn't know who Ben Mayo was last year. I mean, and by the way, Ben Mayo, where the heck is Ben Mayo? I mean, he's gone and wasn't part of that final threesome. As now Mwindi seems to be suffering a little bit, Todd. Head rolling.
A little bit of a break. I think Chariot put a little hammer down. We've got about 7 minutes of running left. So, I mean, somebody's going to have to make their move. And you're seeing a slight acceleration right now. Robert's just taking a peek over his shoulder, and you're seeing separation between him and Jimmy. But it's going to come out to guts. Daniel's thinking, there is no way I want to finish second and third. And he even said yesterday at the press conference, I'm here to win. I want to win the Chicago Marathon, and put that little check in his belt. But right here's the acceleration. You're seeing it. This is probably the move to the line. Robert's trying to get that separation before we get down to the home stretch.
And Jenga, of course, as you said earlier, Tony, doesn't have that kicking speed to really probably hang with a Chariot down the last mile or so.
But Chariot's not known for his great finishing speed. He's great on the hills, and he's great on the last 5 or 6 kilometers, but he's not known for being the great kicker at the end, and he hasn't won Boston in either year by finishing strong on the kick. He's done it on Heartbreak Hill at 21 miles.
Again, Jenga looking over his shoulder at Mwindi, who has fallen off the pace. Chariot trying to put the hammer down here a little bit.
Yeah, and it's not getting rid of Jenga all the way or Mwindi, but I can tell you that in this spring, Daniel Jenga ran a couple of track races in Japan that he hadn't run previously, and he ran very fast in the final kilometer in preparation for maybe needing a little bit more finishing speed come the Chicago Marathon, and maybe that'll come into play in today's races. He's come up on the shoulder of Chariot, who's made a couple of moves trying to get away, hasn't been able to shake him, and now Jenga is challenging him. When you go from on the back to on the shoulder, that tells you that I'm here and I'm meaning business. Now he's back on his shoulder.
And you can tell, too, the wind is really blowing right now. Can you guys just see the jerseys? It's flying in their face. So maybe that's the reason Robert's waiting a little bit longer, because it's a tough job to take it. If you're going to take it with a mile to go, you better know that this is the move that's going to go on to win the race. If not, maybe you're going to continue to kind of make little fake moves until it's time to go. And that's what it looks like he's doing. But Jimmy Mooney's battling himself back into it. The wind's playing a big part into this race right now.
Last 5K, we expected that.
All right, Todd, we're going to get back to you in just a moment. Let's go now to Konstantina Temescu-Dita, who is getting reeled in now by this chase pack. Julie, what can you tell us?
Well, Mark, I think the drama is about to unfold. From my vantage point, it looks like Dita's lead is now only about 15, 20 seconds. I believe that's Galina Bogomolova leading Berhan Aderi. Yeah, I say within the next maybe 800 meters, we're going to have a new leader in this women's race.
Do you have any sense at all, Julie, that Konstantina would have anything left in the tank to be able to go once she gets caught, or once she gets caught, is it over?
You know, right now, what I can see is that the cadence with Bogomolova and Aderi coming up from behind her is just so much quicker than Dita's. Dita's been passed the last 2 miles by probably 30 men and has had no response. I think the race will be over.
All right, Julie, we'll continue to watch as we watch a split screen now. The men on the left, Konstantina struggling as the rest of the women try to reel her in. Right now it's Daniel Jenga, Robert Chariot running 1-2 with less than a mile to go here.
Yeah, Chariot, the champion of this crowd. But
and look at the women. Julie, you've called it. I mean, you said within 800 meters this race would have a new leader.
No, Bogomolova.
And right now it looks like Konstantina Temescu-Dita is about ready to lose her lead.
And she's being passed by Galina Bogomolova, the youngster from Russia, and that is Berhan Aderi from Ethiopia, one of the top Ethiopian runners. There's another woman behind. They passed Dita, that's it. And Dita has no response at all. And Bogomolova is really, really pushing this and giving Aderi a run for her money. Highly competitive in Ethiopian.
All right, here are the men now as we go back as they come to the finish line. And you can see Robert Chariot has opened up a lead over Daniel Jenga. Familiar position for Mr. Jenga.
Just heartbreaking. Second, third. Now he's not calling it over. It's not over. He responds on the bridge over Roosevelt. This is where he didn't have the energy in the previous years, and now it's shoulder to shoulder. Todd, where did he get that energy?
Oh, I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing. Chariot has been trying to drop him, and Jenga continues to grimace and continues to fight. I mean, this is an all-out battle with about a half mile to go. Chariot, I think, thought he had it in the bag when he took a peek over his shoulder and made a big surge about 400 yards ago. But right now, Jenga continues the battle. I don't want to finish second again, but Robert's thrown in another surge, and it looks like this is the real, this is it. If Daniel doesn't respond right now with a quarter to go, Robert's going to be your LaSalle Bank Chicago Marathon champ. He's got about, here we are in the straightaway. Here goes Robert. And Jenga's fighting.
Another
back.
surge.
Unbelievable guts on the part of Daniel Jenga. Chariot goes to his arm. Jenga's not through. Jenga teeth bared. I'm tired of second. This is just like New York City last year, a two-man shoulder to shoulder in the final 100 meters. But Jenga doesn't look like he's got enough. Chariot seems to have the strength. Well, he's going to have all the way to the line.
Jenga again finished twice a second place, twice a third place, and it looks like again another second place finish for Daniel Jenga as Robert Chariot, who won Boston earlier this year, runs to the finish line to pick up the LaSalle Bank Chicago Marathon victory here in 2006. And there is your winner, Robert Chariot. Oh!
Did he cross the line?
I believe he did cross the line.
Did he cross the line? My goodness.
Chariot slipping on the mat as he came to the finish line. He looks to be somewhat injured. Attending to him right now.
His weight came right up from underneath him.
Well, he threw his hands up, obviously, to signal his victory. His weight went back, he hit the mat, and slipped and fell. And of course, every muscle in your body has to be aching after 2 hours and 7 minutes and 26.2 miles anyways at that pace.
He's going very, very fast in the force of the fall. I'm surprised he isn't knocked out. Well, he's injured.
Yeah, he hit his head.
Hit his head. Very injured.
Never seen that before in the
Never.
history of marathoning. Never.
The hands go up here to signal his victory. The weight goes back, and he hits the mat right there and down. Yes, you can see the back of his head hitting the marathon logo, and that's probably the injury they're most concerned about at this point in time.
This is what you see in boxing when they slip on the logos.
But again, unofficially, Robert Chariot of Kenya wins the LaSalle Bank Chicago Marathon.
First American, fantastic for the and has fared very, very well. She was fourth, for instance, in August in the European 10,000 meter championships on the track, very fast. But she'd always dreamed of running a marathon. And finally she said, and her coach is convinced, that the psychology is right. She's ready to switch now at age 29 into the marathon.
We'll get back to these women in just a moment. Again, Robert Chariot injured himself when crossing the finish line. Rob Johnson's with our second place finisher. Rob?
Yeah, Mark, Daniel Jenga has put in some good showings here at the LaSalle Bank Chicago Marathon. Second in 04, third last year, second again. It looked like you might close in on Robert at the very end. Tell us how difficult it was to run today in these conditions, or was it not that difficult for you?
Well, since the year 2002, I've been here and I was looking forward to win the race, but I was unable to win. Maybe I'll try next year.
Well, you had a great race. How hard was it at about mile 25 and a half when it looked like you might overtake Robert to try to get that last burst of energy? Tell us what was going through your mind at that time, Daniel.
You know, the wind was so strong, and I was ready to win the race, but Robert Chariot, he's the one who won the race. I have to congratulate him, and maybe I'll try to come Chicago maybe next year.
Well, again, a great race for you. Now, when you were almost crossing the finish line, you saw Robert ahead of you, and you saw him slip. What went through your mind when you saw him slip and hit his head there on the ground?
Even me, I was so tired, so I could not see what happened.
Well, Daniel, a nice job indeed. Thank you for taking the time for us, and congratulations. Daniel Jenga from Kenya, the second place finisher again, just seconds behind Robert Chariot. And just to let you know, you may have seen it when they were tending to Robert Chariot, that Daniel Jenga went over to make sure that he was actually okay. And of course, as our viewers know right now, they have taken Robert Chariot to be tended to medically. We hope to get him here in just a couple of minutes if he is able to do so. Mark?
All right, Rob, thank you very much. Again, Daniel Jenga, our second place finisher, as we get back to the women.
Because they to keep as professional athletes, they have to hire a
First
lot of
time,
pressure.
but
There
Gary
goes
into
the
the
move.
lead.
And
There she goes.
Catherine, the way she passed Bogomolova was just so graceful, so easy. She started to turn over a little quicker. I think she's smelling the finish line. She's making her bid to become the LaSalle Bank Chicago Marathon champion here in 2006. She looks great.
That is an absolute definitive move. Smooth, easy, looks back. Okay, I'm gone. I'm gone.
I mean,
Beautiful.
Angular body, she's just picking it up and putting them down, leaving Bogomolova in the dust at this point.
Yeah, and she still really doesn't know the distance. She's going to go from a 2:21.50. As Bogomolova decides, I don't want to finish second either, by the way. But both these women are going to run personal best times.
Well, will not be sub 220, but awfully close.
And again, those last 3 miles just
Into
rob
the
you
wind?
of about 20 seconds a mile. So it's almost a minute you lose in that last 5 kilometers.
She's got to thread her way through here, through the men here, and it's actually stunning to see so many men running this well. Normally, at this stage, we don't see the field this thick with American finishers. But here she comes.
Berhan Aderi from Ethiopia, a world champion at 3,000, 5,000 meters, has made her commitment to the marathon and wins her first major marathon. Unofficially, just over 2 hours and 20 minutes. Congratulations to her. We might have a new star on our hands.
We do have a new star on our hands. We certainly have a new Ethiopian champion. She just got her Ethiopian national record back. By almost a minute. By a minute.
A national record.
A national record by a minute.
Bogomolova as well. The Russian national record went down today too. And if we don't think it hurts, that picture says plenty.
All right, as you continue to see American men, and there is Aderi.
She gave it everything she had.
She certainly did. And again, we've had such great finishes. Abdi Rahman, Brian Sell, the U.S. runners did so well. Right now they're putting Aderi in a wheelchair, probably because she's just completely exhausted after what was a tremendous win here in Chicago.
Isn't it amazing how she could look so beautiful all the way to the finish, and then she, at the absolute finish line, like Robert Chariot, that's all they wrote.
Final stretch.
Okay, this is Benita Johnson from Australia. She is going to have a great race. Look at Elva Dreyer, I believe, coming up behind. That could be the first American finisher.
Benita Johnson's actually going for the Australian national record. But look at Constantina Dita. And poor thing, you can see she's just she's not even. It's a real rough way to run a race.
Again, went out in world record pace time. Just blew away from everybody, and they finally reeled her in. She has continued to fall back. We're at 2:20, 2:35 right now as she tries to make the corner over the bridge and head to the finish line.
It's one thing to run at world record pace, another thing to just go blitzing by world record pace.
Mm-hmm. Well, Benita Johnson just finished. This is Madai Perez. This is coached by, just coming into the finish, coached by Herman Silva. But we're watching our 2004 champion here, Constantina Temescu-Dita, our early leader, as she comes around the corner and comes in.
Benita Johnson, by the way, an Australian record. That's 3 national records so far on the women's side.
I had talked to some people earlier this week who thought she would do extremely well, had been training very well, and expected to have a very good run here. So congratulations to her with a new national record for Australia as we watch Constantina Temescu-Dita, a runner-up last year, a winner in 2004, went out in a world record pace time.
And she's looking over her shoulder, and when you're looking over the shoulder like that, you're thinking, oh, God, please let my legs just last to the line.
But this is exactly what Dina Castor was feeling last year, and Constantina was coming on strong, so what a difference a year makes.
She's looking behind. She said, oh, please don't let anybody come up on me now.
Well, consider, she went out in 1 hour and 8 minutes flat for the first half, and here we are at 2:24. That means this is like a 1:16 second half.
Oh, wow. I'll tell you, still a great, great champion. She broke the world record in 20K a couple of weeks ago, Tony, like you said, and now she's been in Chicago. People have come here and come to love her. She's been living in the Palmer House for the last 2 weeks and interfacing with the whole community and running on Lakeshore Drive. A great champion.
Constantina Temescu-Dita, a former LaSalle Bank Chicago Marathon champion, runner-up last year, finally crosses the finish line unofficially at about 2:24.25. Again, the winner, Baran Adiri from Ethiopia, Robert Chariot, our winner on the men's side. As you can see, Constantina completely spent. As you said, Tony, not the way to run a marathon.
Well, yet the first opponent you've got is the distance itself. And if you lose respect for it, it'll bite you.
All right, we're going to step aside now as we have our winners on both the men's and women's side. We'll take a timeout. We'll be back to conclude our coverage of the LaSalle Bank Chicago Marathon right after this. Welcome back to the 29th running of the LaSalle Bank Chicago Marathon as you look at the finish line here on a cold and blustery autumn day in October. And we have our winners, the champions of this 2006 race. The men, Robert Chariot, beating Daniel Jenga and then slipping at the finish line, falling and hitting his head. He is being attended by the medical services right now. As soon as we have an update on him, we will give you that. And then Baran Adiri, the Ethiopian on the right, against Galina Bogomolova. And the Ethiopian with a track background ended up pulling away and winning her first ever major marathon, the 2006 LaSalle Bank Chicago Marathon.
And only her second marathon.
An amazing performance by the tall Ethiopian. And this, of course, is live coverage of the LaSalle Bank Chicago Marathon as we see runners continue to stream into the finish line.
At just under 2 hours and 30 minutes and counting right now.
Again, Chariot at 2:07.35. Jenga just 5 seconds back. Again, Jenga has finished second 3 times now and third twice in 5 years here in Chicago. Wendy, as you said earlier, a a 5-time winner of the Honolulu Marathon, ran 2:07:51. Abdirahman, the American, 2:08:56, which is just a splendid time for an American marathoner.
The third fastest time ever run by an American. And just so people know, in 6th position was Brian Sell from Rochester, Michigan in 2:10:47.
All right, let's check in with Rob Johnson now, who's standing by with the Executive Race Director, Kerry Pinkowski. Rob?